Louisa May Alcott of Little Women fame. They did make a movie out of this, which is part of my research my mom and I watched last week. It's pretty good. It doesn't quite follow the story, but pretty darn close. And is anybody a fan of Orphan Black TV series? The heroine in Orphan Black played Tilly in an old-fashioned Thanksgiving movie. And of course, she's incredible, as are all her sisters in both shows. So here in Kitely, we are at Bilbo's house. We're in a hobbit hole of great dimensions. All kinds of cool stuff here. If you had a chance to want to pop by and check it out, it's really, really cool little build. His bedroom and his workroom and the dining room. And in the dining room, we have a humongous Thanksgiving spread. And if anybody here in Kitely wants to sit at the dinner table, you're most welcome to. But I thought we'd just hang out here in the parlor by the fire. And by the way, the little brown wooden chairs, if you need them, are movable and copyable by anyone if you want to move around. But as I glance around the room here, I see you're all quite comfortable as you are. And here in Second Life, apparently I broke most of the givers except for the cake and maybe the Brussels sprouts. The Brussels sprouts on the table might not work, but I know for a fact that there's someone here, if you really, really want a Brussels sprout, who will take care of you because he's a generous guy. So, welcome. I really enjoyed the movie. I really enjoyed the story. And it's Louisa May Alcott. What a prolific writer. Please relax and enjoy tonight's story, which is an old-fashioned Thanksgiving. 60 years ago, up among the New Hampshire hills, lived Farmer Basset, with a house full of sturdy sons and daughters growing up about him. They were poor in money, but rich in land and love. For the wide acres of wood, corn, and pasture land fed, warmed, and clothed the flock, while mutual patience, affection, and courage made the old farmhouse a very happy home. November had come. The crops were in, and barn, buttery, and bin were overflowing with the harvest that made the summer's hard work. The big kitchen was a jolly place just now, for in the great fireplace roared a cheerful fire. On the walls hung garlands of dried apples and onions and corn, and pictures of Gandalf. Up aloft from the beam shone crook-necked squashes, juicy hams, and dried venison. For in those days deer still haunted the deep forest, and hunters flourished. Savory smells were in the air. On the crane hung steaming kettles, and down among the red embers copper saucepans simmered, all suggestive of an approaching feast. A white-headed baby lay in the old blue cradle that had rocked 7 other babies, now and then lifting his head to look out like a round full moon, and then subsided to kick and crow contentedly, sucking the rosy apple he had no teeth to bite into. 2 small boys sat on the wooden settle, shelling corn for popping and picking out the biggest nuts from the goodly store their own hands had gathered back in October. 4 young girls stood at the long dresser, busily chopping meat, pounding spice, and slicing apples. And the tongues of Tilly, Prue, Roxy, and Rhodey went as fast as their hands. Farmer Bassett and F, the oldest boy, were choring around outside. By the way, F is spelled E-P-H, not F. It's short for Ephraim. Thanksgiving was at hand, and all must be in order for that time-honored day. To and fro, from table to hearth, bustled buxom Mrs. Bassett, flushed and flowery, but busy and blithe as the queen bee of this busy little hive should be. Oh, I do like being seasonable and having things to mind. Oh, Thanksgiving dinners can't be drove, and it does take a sight of victuals to fill up all these hungry stomachs, said the good woman, as she gave a vigorous stir to the great kettle of cider apple sauce and cast a glance of housewifely pride at the fine arrays of pies set forth on the buttery shelves. Only one more day, and then it'll be time to eat. I didn't take but 1 bowl of hasty pudding this morning, so I shall have plenty of room when the nice things come out, confided Seth to Saul, as he cracked a large hazelnut as easily as a squirrel. Well, no need to starve him beforehand, I always say. I have enough room, and I'd like to have Thanksgiving every day, answered Solomon, gloating like a young ogre over a little pig that lay nearby ready for roasting. Sakes alive, I don't, boys. It's a marcy it don't come but once a year. I should be worn to thread paper with all this extra work atop of my winter weaving and spinning, laughed their mother as she plunged her plump arms into the long bread trough and began to knead the dough as if a famine was at hand. Tilly, the oldest girl, a red-cheeked, black-eyed lass of 14, was grinding busily at the mortar. For spices were costly, and not a grain must be wasted. Prue kept time with a chopper, and the twins sliced away at the apples till their little brown arms ached, for all knew how to work, and did so now with a will. I think it's real fun to have Thanksgiving at home. I'm sorry Grandma's sick, so we can't go there as usual, but I like to mess around here, don't you girls? Asked Tilly, pausing to take a sniff of the spicy pestle. It'll be kind of lonesome with only our own folks. I like to see all the cousins and aunts and have games and sing, cried the twins, who were regular little romps and could run, swim, coast, and shout as well as their brothers. Anyway, I don't care a mite for all that. It'll be so nice to eat dinner together, warm and comfortable at home. This from quiet Prue, who loved her own cozy nooks like a cat. Come, come, girls, fly round and get your chores done so we can clear away for dinner just as soon as I clap my bread into the oven, called Mrs. Bassett presently, as she rounded off the last loaf of brown bread, which was to feed the hungry mouths that seldom tasted any other. Here comes a man coming up the hill lively. I guess it's Gad Hopkins. Pa told him to bring a dozen oranges if they weren't too high, shouted Saul and Seth, running to the door, while the girls smacked their lips at the thought of this rare treat. Oranges in November. And Baby threw his apple overboard as if getting ready for new cargo. But all were doomed to disappointment, for it was not Gad with a bundle of oranges. No desired fruit here. It was just a stranger, who threw himself off his horse and hurried up to Mr. Bassett in the yard with some brief message that made the farmer drop his axe and look so sober that his wife guessed at once that some bad news had come, and crying, "Mother's worse, I know she is, oh, I just know it." And out ran the good woman, Mrs. Bassett, forgetful of the flower on her arms and the oven waiting for its most important batch. The man said old Mr. Chadwick, down to Keene, stopped him as he passed and told him to tell Mrs. Bassett her mother was failing fast and she'd better come today. He knew no more, and having delivered his errand, he rode away, saying it looked like snow and he must be jogging or he wouldn't get home till night. "Oh, we must go off right now, Eldad. Hitch up, and I'll be ready in less than no time," said Mrs. Bassett. Eldad, that's the first name of Mr. Bassett. I don't know what that one's short for. She wasted not a minute in tears and lamentations, but pulling off her apron, she went in, with her mind a jumble of bread and anxiety, turkey, sorrow, haste, and cider apple sauce. A few words told the story, and the children left their work to help her get ready, mingling their grief for Grandma with their regrets for a lost dinner. "I'm dreadful sorry, dears, but it can't be helped. I couldn't cook nor eat no way now, and if that blessed woman gets better sudden, as she has before, we'll have a cause for Thanksgiving, and I'll give you a dinner you won't forget in a hurry," said Mrs. Bassett, as she tied on the brown silk pumpkin hood with a sob for the good old mother who made it for her. Not a child complained after that, but ran about helpfully, bringing moccasins, heating the footstone, and getting ready for a long drive, because Grandma lived 20 miles away. There were no railroads in those parts to whisk people to and fro like magic. By the time old yellow sleigh was at the door, the bread was in the oven, and Mrs. Bassett was waiting, with her camlet cloak on and the baby done up like a small bale of blankets. "Now, F, you must look after the cattle like a man, son, and keep up the fires, for there's a storm brewing, and neither the children nor dumb critters must suffer," said Mrs. Bassett. Mr. Bassett turned up the collar of his rough coat and put on his blue mittens, while the old mare shook her bells as if she preferred to trip to Keene to hauling wood any day. "Tilly, put extra comfortables on the bed tonight. The wind is searching up the chamber. Have the baked beans and Injun pudding for dinner, and whatever you do, don't let the boys get at the mince pies, or you'll have them down sick. I shall come back the minute I can leave. Pa will come tomorrow anyway, so keep snug and good. I depend on you, my daughter. You use your judgment. Don't let nothing happen while Mother's away." Yes'm, goodbye, called the children, as Mrs. Bassett was packed into sleigh and driven away, leaving a stream of directions behind her. F, the 16-year-old boy, immediately put on his biggest boots, assumed a sober, responsible manner, and surveyed his little responsibilities with a paternal air, jolly like his father's. Tilly tied on her mother's bunch of keys, rolled up the sleeves of her homespun gown, and began to order about the younger girls. They soon forgot about poor old Granny, and found it great fun to keep the house all alone, for Mother seldom left home, but ruled her family in the good old-fashioned way. There were no servants, for the little daughters were Mrs. Bassett's only maids, and the stout boys helped their father, all working happily together with no wages but love, learning in the best manner the use of heads and hands with which they were to make their own way in the world. The few flakes that caused the farmer to predict bad weather soon increased a regular snowstorm, with gusts of wind, for up among the hills winter came early and lingered long. But the children were busy and gay and warm indoors and never minded the rising gale nor the whirling white storm outside. Tilly got them a good dinner, and when it was over, the two elder girls went to their spinning, for in the kitchen stood the big and little wheels and baskets of wool rolls ready to be twisted into yarn for the winter's knitting, and each day brought its stint of work to the daughters, who hoped to be as thrifty as their mother. F kept up a glorious fire, and he superintended the small boys, and popped corn and whittled boats on the hearth, while Roxy and Rhodey dressed corncob dolls in the settle corner, and Bose, the brindled mastiff, lay on the braided mat, luxuriously warming his old legs. And thus employed, they made a pretty picture. Those rosy boys and girls in their homespun suits with the rustic toys are tasked with most children nowadays would find very poor or tiresome. Tilly and Prue sang as they stepped to and fro, drawing out the smoothly twisted threads to the musical hum of the great spinning wheels. Little girls chattered like magpies over their dolls and the new bedspread they were planning to make, all white dimity stars on a blue calico ground, as a Christmas present to Ma. The boys roared at F's jokes and had rough and tumble games over Bose, who didn't mind them the least, and so the afternoon wore pleasantly away. At sunset, the boys went out to feed the cattle, bringing in heaps of wood and lock up for the night, as the lonely farmhouse seldom had visitors after dark. The girls got the simple supper of brown bread and milk, baked apples, and a donut all round as a treat. Then they sat before the fire, the sisters knitting, the brothers with books or games, for F loved reading, and Sol and Seth never failed to play a few games of Morris with barley corns, on the little board they'd made themselves at one corner of the dresser. "Oh, do read out a piece," said Tilly from Mother's chair, where she sat in state, finishing off the 6th woolen sock that she had knit that month. She looked very comfortable, sitting there in that nice big fluffy chair, like Kira hearing kindly. "Oh, well, very well then. It's the old history book," said F. "But here's a bit you may like, since it's about our folks." And he began turning the yellow pages to look at a picture of two quaintly dressed children in some ancient castle. Yes, read that. I always like to hear about Lady Matilde, who I was named for, and Lord Basset, Pa's great-great-great-grandpa, and Caledonia. She was in that story somewhere, too, I think. Of course, Pa's great-grandpa is only a farmer now, but it's nice to know that, back then we were somebody 200 or 300 years ago," said Tilly, bridling and tossing her curly head as she fancied that Lady Matilda might have done. "And don't read the queer words, because we don't understand them anyway. You tell it now," commanded Roxy from the cradle, where she was drowsily cuddled up with Rhodey. "Well, a long time ago, when Charles I was in prison," began F., "Lord Basset was a true friend to him." And he plunged into his story without delay. "The Lord had some papers that would have hung a lot of people if the king's enemies got a hold of them," went on F. "So when he heard one day, all of a sudden, the soldiers were at the castle gate to carry him off, he had just time to call his girl to him and say, 'I may be going to my death, but I won't betray my master. There's no time to burn these papers. I cannot take them with me. They are hidden in the old leathern chair where I sit. No one knows this but you, daughter, and you must guard them until I come send you a safe message to take them away. Promise me to be brave and silent, girl, and I can go without fear.'" You see, he wasn't afraid to die, but he was afraid to seem a traitor. And so the young Lady Matilde, she promised solemnly, and the words were hardly out of her mouth when the men came in and her father was carried away as a prisoner and sent off to the tower. But she didn't cry. She just called her brother and sat down in that chair with her head leaning back on those papers like a queen. She waited while the soldiers hunted the house over for them. "Now, wasn't that a smart girl?" cried Tilly, beaming with pride, for Tilly was named for this ancestress, and she knew the whole story by heart, of course. "I reckon she was scared, though, when the men came swearing in and asked her if she knew anything about it. The boy did his part then, for he didn't know, and he fired up and stood before his sister, and he says he, as bold as a lion, 'If my lord had told us where the papers be, we would die before we betray him. But we are children and know nothing, and it's cowardly of you to try and frighten us with oaths and drawing swords.'" As F quoted from the book, Seth planted himself before Tilly with the long poker in his hand, saying as he flourished it valiantly, "Why didn't the boy take his father's sword and lay about him? I would if anyone was harsh to my Tilly." "You bantam. He was only a bit of a boy," said Tilly, "and he couldn't do anything like that. Now sit down and hear the rest of it," commanded she, with a pat on the yellow head. And a private resolve in her heart that Seth should have the largest piece of pie at dinner next day as a reward for his chivalry to her. Well, the men off after turning the castle out of the window, but they said they should come again, continued F. So faithful Matilde was full of trouble, and hardly dared to leave the room where the chair stood and the papers were hid. All day she sat there, and at night her sleep was so full of fear about it that she often got up and she went to see all was safe. The servants thought the fright had hurt her wits and let her be. But Rupert, the boy, stood by her and never was afraid of her strange ways. She was a pious maid, the book says, and often spent the long evenings reading the Bible, with her brother by her, all alone in the great room, with no one to help her bear her secret, and no good news of her father neither. At last the word came that the king was dead, and his friends were banished out of England. And then the poor children were in a sad plight, for they had no mother, and the servants all run away, leaving only one faithful old man to help them. But father did come, cried Roxy eagerly. You'll see, continued F, half telling, half reading. Matilda was sure that he would come, so she sat on in the big chair, guarding the papers, and no one could get her away, until one day a man came with her father's ring and told her to give up the secret. She knew the ring, but wouldn't tell until she had asked many questions so as to be very sure. And while the man answered all about her father and the king, Matilda looked at him sharply. Then she stood up and said in a tremble, for there's something strange about the man, Sir, I doubt you in spite of the ring you have. I will not answer till you pull off the false beard you wear, and that I may see your face and know if you are my father's friend or foe. And off came the disguise, and brave Matilda found it was the Lord himself, my Lord himself, come to take them with him out of England. He was so very proud of that faithful girl, I guess, for the old chair still stands in the castle, and the name keeps in the family. Pa says even over here where some of the Bassets came along from the Pilgrims. Our Telly would have been just as brave, I know, and she looks like the old picture down in the grandma's, don't she, F? Cried Prue, who admired her bold, bright sister very much. Well, I think you do set in part best, Prue. You're so patient. Tilly would fight like a wildcat, but she can't hold her tongue worth a cent, answered F, whereat Tilly pulled his hair, and the story ended with a general frolic. When the moon-faced clock behind the door struck 9, Tilly tucked up the children under the extra comfortables, and having kissed them all around as mother did, crept into her own nest, never minding the little drifts of snow that sifted in upon her coverlet between the shingles of the roof, or the storm that raged outside. As if he felt the need of an unusual vigilance, the old dog, Bose, lay down on the mat before the door, and the kitty had the warm hearth all to herself. If any late wanderer had looked in at midnight, he would have seen the fire blazing up again, and in the cheerful glow the old cat blinking her yellow eyes as she sat bolt upright beside the spinning wheel like some sort of household goblin, or guarding the children while they slept. When they woke, like early birds, it still snowed, but up the little Bassets jumped, broke the ice in their pitchers, and went down with cheeks glowing like winter apples after a brisk scrub and a scramble into their clothes. F was off to the barn, and Tilly soon had a great kettle of mush ready, with warm milk from the cows, and made a wholesome breakfast for the 7 hearty children. Now, about dinner, said the young housekeeper, as a pewter spoon stopped clattering, the earthen bowl stood empty. Ma said have what we like best, but she didn't expect us to have a real Thanksgiving dinner because she won't be here to cook it, and we don't know how, began Prue doubtfully. I can roast a turkey and make a pudding as well as anybody, I guess. The pies are all ready, and if we can't boil vegetables and so on, we don't deserve any dinner, cried Tilly, burning to distinguish herself and bound to enjoy the utmost of her brief authority. Yes, yes, cried all the boys. Let's have dinner anyway. Ma won't care, and the good victuals will spoil if they ain't eaten right up. Well, Pa's coming home tonight, so we won't have dinner till late. That'll be a real genteel and give us plenty of time, added Tilly, suddenly realizing the novelty of the task she had undertaken. I think so, Tallis, though the turkey's pretty important. You generally do without the Brussels sprouts. But if you don't have Brussels sprouts, you can't have turkeys, because turkeys come from Brussels sprouts. Anyway, Tilly suddenly realized this task and said, Did you ever roast a turkey? Asked Roxy with an air of deep interest. Oh, should you even dare try? Said Rhodey in an awe-stricken tone. You will see what I can do, said Tilly. Ma said I was to use my judgment about things, and I'm going to. All you children have got to do is keep out of my way and let Prue and me work. I wish you'd put a fire in the best rooms. The little ones can play in there. We shall want the setting room for the table, and I won't have 'em picking round when we get things fixed," commanded Tilly, bound to make her short reign a brilliant one. "Well, I don't know about that. Ma didn't tell us to," began cautious Eph, who felt that his invasion of the sacred best parlor was a daring step indeed. "Don't we always do it Sundays and Thanksgivings? Wouldn't Ma wish the children kept safe and warm anyhow? Can I get up a nice dinner with 4 rascals under my feet all the time? Come now, if you want roast turkey and onions, plum pudding and mince pie, you'll have to do as I tell you and be lively about it." Tilly spoke with such spirit, and her last suggestion was so irresistible that Eph gave in. Laughing good-naturedly, tramped away to heat up the best room, devoutly hoping that nothing serious would happen to punish such audacity. The young folks delightedly trooped in to destroy the order of that prim apartment, with housekeeping under the black horsehair sofa, horseback riders on the arms of the best rocking chair, and Indian war dance all over the well-waxed furniture. Eph, finding the society of the peaceful sheep and cows more to his mind than that of 2 excited sisters, lingered over his chores as long as possible in the barn and left the girls in peace. Now Tilly and Prue were in their glory, and as soon as the breakfast things were out of the way, they prepared for a grand cooking time. They were handy girls. Though they had never heard of a cooking school, they had never touched a piano. They knew nothing of embroidery beyond the samplers which hung in the frame parlor, one of which was ornamented with a pink mourner under a blue weeping willow, and the other sampler with a pleasing verse, each word being done in a different color, which gave the effect of a distracted rainbow. "This sampler neat was worked by me in my 12th year, Prudence B." So at least they can sew and embroider, right? Maybe they can make a dinner. I guess we'll find out. Both rolled up their sleeves, put on their largest aprons, and got out all the spoons and dishes and pots and pans they could find. "So as to have everything handy," Prue said. "Now, sister, we'll have dinner at 5. Pa will be here by that time if he's coming tonight at all, and be so surprised to find us all ready, for he won't have had any nice victuals if Grandma is so sick," said Tilly importantly. "I shall give the children a piece at noon." Tilly meant luncheon. "Doughnuts and cheese with apple pie and cider will please 'em. There's beans for Eph. He likes cold pork, so we won't stop to warm it. There's lots to do, and I don't mind saying to you I'm dreadful dubersome about that turkey." "Oh, it's all ready, but the stuffing and the roasting is as easy as can be. I can baste first rate. Ma always likes to have me, so I'm so patient and steady, she says," answered Prue, for the responsibility of this great undertaking did not rest upon her, so she took a cheerful view of things. "I know, but it's the stuffing that troubles me," said Tilly, rubbing her round elbows as she eyed the immense fowl laid out on the platter before her. "I don't know how much I want, or what sort of yerbs to put in it. He's so awful big, and I'm kind of afraid of him." "I ain't afraid of him. I fed him all summer. He never gobbled at me once. Though I do feel pretty mean thinking of gobbling him, poor old chap," laughed Prue, patting her departed pet with an air of mingled affection and appetite. "Well, I'll get the pudding off my mind first, for it ought to boil all day anyway. Put the big kettle on and see if the spit is clean while I get ready." Prue obediently tugged away at the crane, with its black hooks from which hung the iron tea kettle and 3-legged pot, and then she settled the long spit in the grooves made for it in the tall andirons, and she put the dripping pan beneath. For in those days, meat was roasted as it should be, and not baked in ovens. Incidentally, in the next room over from here, and at the Hobbit hole, there's a nice big piece of meat roasting on the andirons and all that, just like it says. Meanwhile, Tilly attacked the plum pudding. She felt pretty sure of coming out right. For she had seen her mother do it so many times, it looked pretty easy. So in went suet and fruit, all sorts of spice to be sure she got the right ones, and brandy instead of wine. But she forgot both sugar and salt, and she tied it in a cloth so tightly it had no room to swell, so it would come out as heavy as a lead and hard as a cannonball if the bag didn't burst and spoil it all. Happily unconscious of all these mistakes, though, Tilly popped it into the pot and proudly watched it bobbing away before she put the cover on and left it to its fate. "You know, I can't quite remember what flavoring Ma puts in," she said, when she had got her bread well soaked for the stuffing. "Sage and onions and applesauce go with goose, but I can't feel sure of anything but pepper and salt for a turkey." "No, well," Prue started. "Ma puts in some kind of mint, I don't, but I forget whether it's spearmint, peppermint, or pennyroyal." She had a tone of doubt now, but she tried to show off her knowledge of herbs, or at least of their names. It seems to me it's sweet marjoram or summery savory. I guess we'll put in both, and then we'll be sure to be right. The best is up garret. You run and get some while I mash the bread, commanded Tilly, diving into the mess. Parentheses. Up garret means up in the attic. Unparentheses. Away trotted Prue, but in her haste she got catnip and wormwood, for the garret was darkish, and Prue's little nose was so full of the smell of onions she had been peeling that everything smelt of them. Eager to be of use, she pounded up the herbs and scattered the mixture with a liberal hand into the bowl. Well, it doesn't smell just right, but I suppose it will when it's cooked, said Tilly, as she filled the empty stomach that seemed aching for food and sewed it up with blue yarn, which happened to be handy. She forgot to tie down his legs and wings, though, but she set him by till his hour came, well satisfied with her work. Shall we roast a little pig, too? I think he'd look nice with the necklace of sausages as Ma fixed one last Christmas, asked Prue, later with her success. I couldn't do that. I love that little pig, and I cried when he was killed. I should feel as if I was roasting the baby, answered Tilly, glancing towards the buttery where Piggy hung, looking so pink and pretty, and certainly did seem cruel to eat him. It took a long time to get all the vegetables ready, for as the cellar was full, the girls thought they would have every sort. F helped, and by noon they was always ready for cooking, and cranberry sauce, and a good deal scorched, was cooling in the lean-to. Luncheon was a lively meal, and doughnuts and cheese vanished in such quantities that Tilly feared no one would have an appetite for a sumptuous dinner. The boys assured her they would be starving by 5 o'clock, and Saul mourned bitterly over the little pig that was not to be served up. Now you all go and coast about while Prue and I set the table and get out the best Chiney, said Tilly, bent on having her dinner look well no matter what its failings might be. Out came the rough sleds, on went the round hoods, old hats, red cloaks, moccasins, and away trudged the 4 younger Bassets to disport themselves in the snow and try the ice down by the old mill where the great wheel turned and splashed so merrily in the summertime. F took his fiddle and he scraped away to his heart's content in the parlor, while the girls, after a short rest, set the table and made all ready to dish up the dinner when the exciting moment came. It was not at all the sort of table we see now, but would look very plain and countrified to us, with its green-handled knives and 2-pronged steel forks, its red and white china and pewter platters scoured till they shone, with mugs and spoons to match, and a brown jug for the cider. The cloth was coarse, but white as snow, and the little maids had seen the blue-eyed flax grow, out of which their mother wove the linen they had watched and ordered while it bleached in the green meadow. They had no napkins and very little silver, but the best tankard and Ma's few wedding spoons were set forth in state. Nuts and apples at the corners gave an air, and the place of honor was left in the middle for the oranges yet to come. Oh, don't it look beautiful? Said Prue, when they paused to admire the general effect. Pretty nice, I think. I wish Ma would see how we can do, began Tilly, when a loud howling startled both girls and sent them flying to the window. The short afternoon had passed so quickly that twilight had come before they knew it, and now as they looked out through the gathering dusk, they saw 4 small black figures tearing up the road to come bursting in, all screaming at once, The bear! The bear! F, get the gun! He's coming! The bear's coming! F had dropped his fiddle and got down his gun before the girls could calm the children down to tell them their story, which they did in somewhat incoherent manner. Down in the holler, we coasted, we heard a growl. His eyes big as saucers. I saw him first looking over the wall. No, I did. No, said Seth, eager to get his share of the honor. He was awful big and shaggy, quavered Roxy, clinging to Tilly, while Rhodey hid in Prue's skirts and piped out. His great big paws kept clawing at us. I was so scared my legs would hardly go. We ran as fast as we could go, and he come growling after us. He's an awful hungry bear, and he'll eat every one of us if he gets in here, continued Saul, looking about him for a safe retreat. Oh, F, don't let him eat us, cried both little girls, flying upstairs to hide under their mother's bed as the surest shelter. No danger of that, you little geese. I'll shoot him as soon as he comes. Get out of the way, boys. And F raised the window to get a good aim. There he is. Fire away. Don't miss, cried Seth, hastily following Saul, who had climbed to the top of the dresser as a good perch from which to view the approaching fray. Prue retired to the hearth, as if bent on dying at her post rather than desert the turkey, now browning beautiful, as she expressed it. But Tilly boldly stood at the open window, ready to lend a hand if the enemy proved too much for F. All the children had seen bears, of course, but none had ever come so near before, and even brave F felt that the big brown beast slowly trotting up the dooryard was an unusually formidable specimen. He was growling horribly at them, and he stopped now and then as if to rest and shake himself. Get the axe, Tilly, and if I should miss, you stand ready to keep him off while I load again, said F, anxious to kill his first bear and in style and alone. A girl's help didn't count, he reckoned. Tilly flew for the axe and was at her brother's side by the time the bear was near enough to be dangerous. He stood up on his hind legs and he seemed to sniff with relish the savory odors that poured out of the window. "Fire, F! Fire!" cried Tilly firmly. No. Wait till he rears up again. I'll get a better shot then, answered the boy, while Prue covered her ears to shut out the bang, and the small boys cheered from their dusty refuge up among the pumpkins. A very singular thing happened next, and all who saw it stood amazed. For suddenly Tilly threw down the axe, flung open the door, and ran straight into the arms of that great big bear, who stood erect to receive her, while his growlings changed to a loud "ha ha 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 ha!" that startled the children more than the report of the gun. "It's Gad Hopkins! He's trying to fool us!" cried Eph, much disgusted at the loss of his prey, for these hardy boys loved to hunt. "Oh, Gad, how could you scare us so?" laughed Tilly, still held fast in one shaggy arm of the bear, while the other drew a dozen oranges from some deep pocket in the buffalo skin coat, and he fired them into the kitchen with such good aim that Eph ducked, Prue screamed, and Saul and Seth came down much quicker than they went up. "Well, you see, I got upset down yonder, and the old horse went home while I was floundering in the drift," said Gad. "So I tried on the buffaloes to tote 'em easy, and I come along till I see the children playing in the holler, and I just meant to give 'em a little scare, but they run like partridges, and I kept up the joke to see how Eph would like this sort of company." "Well, I'll tell you, you'd have had a warm welcome if we hadn't found you out," said Eph. "I'd have pulled a bullet right through you in a jiffy, old chap." Eph came out to shake hands with a young giant who was only a year or two older than himself. "Oh, come in and set up to dinner with us. Prue and I have done it all ourselves, and Pa will be along soon, reckon," cried Tilly, trying to escape. "Couldn't no ways. My folks will think I'm dead if I don't get along home, especially since a horse and a sleigh gone ahead empty. I done my errand, and I had my joke, and I want my pay, Tilly." Gad took a big hearty kiss from the rosy cheeks of his little sweetheart, Tilly, as he called her. His own cheeks tingled with the smart slap she gave him when she ran away, calling out that she hated bears who bring her axe next time. "Well, I ain't afeard. Your sharp eyes found me out, and if you run into a bear's arms, you must expect a hug," answered Gad as he pushed back the robe and settled his fur cap more becomingly. "I should have known you in a minute if I hadn't been asleep and the squirrels squalled at me. You did it well, though, Gad, and I advise you not to try it again in a hurry. You will get shot," said Eph as they parted, he rather crestfallen and Gad in high glee. "Oh, my sakes alive! The turkey's burnt on one side, the kettles have boiled over, so the pies put to warm are all ashes," scolded Tilly, as the flurry subsided and she remembered her dinner. "Well, I can't help it. I couldn't think of victuals when I was expected to be eaten alive myself, could I?" pleaded poor Prue, who had tumbled into the cradle when the rain of oranges began. Tilly laughed, and all the rest joined in, so good humor was restored, and the spirits of the younger ones were revived by sucks from one orange, which was passed from hand to hand with great rapidity, while the older girls dished up the dinner. They're just struggling to get the pudding out of their cloth when Roxy called out, "Here's Pa!" "Oh, there's folks with him," added Rhodey. "Lots of them. I see 2 big sleighs chock full of people," shouted Seth, peering through the dusk. It looks like a cemetery." "I guess Grandma's dead and come up to be buried here," said Saul in a solemn tone. This startling suggestion made Tilly, Prue, and Eph hasten to look out, full of dismay at such an ending to their festival. "Well, if that is a funeral, the mourners are uncommon jolly," said Eph, dryly, as merry voices and loud laughter broke the white silence without. "Oh, I see Aunt Cynthia and Cousin Hetty, and there's Mose and Amos. I do declare Pa's bringing them all home to have some fun here," cried Prue, as she recognized one familiar face after another. "Oh, my patience! Ain't I glad I got dinner, and don't I hope it'll turn out good?" exclaimed Tilly, while the twins pranced with delight and the small boys roared, "Hooray for Pa! Hooray for Thanksgiving!" The cheer was answered heartily, and in came father, mother, baby, aunts, and cousins, all in great spirits, and all much surprised to find such a festive welcome awaiting them. "Ain't Grandma dead at all, then?" asked Saul, in the midst of kissing and handshaking, somewhat surprised and almost sounding disappointed. "Bless your heart, no. It was all a mistake of old Mr. Chadwick's. Oh, Mr. Chadwick, he's deaf as an adder, and when Mrs. Brooks told him Mother was mending fast, and she wanted him to come down today, certain sure he got the message all wrong, and He gave it to the first person passing in such a way as to scare me most to death and sent us down in a hurry. Mother was sitting up as chirk as you please and dreadful sorry you didn't all come. So to keep the house quiet for her, to give you a taste of the fun, your pa fetched us all up here to spend the evening, and we're going to have a jolly time right here to judge by the looks of things. And Cynthia briskly finished the tale when Mrs. Bassett paused for want of breath. Well, what in the world put into your head we was coming and set you to getting such a supper up? Asked Mr. Bassett, looking about him, well pleased and much surprised at the plentiful table. Tilly modestly began to tell, but the others broke in and sang her praises in a sort of chorus, in which bears and pigs and pies and oranges were oddly mixed. Great satisfaction was expressed by all. Tilly and Prue were so elated by the commendation of Ma and the aunts that they set forth their dinner, sure everything was perfect. But when the eating began, which it did the moment wraps were off, then their pride got a fall. For the first person who tasted the stuffing was big cousin Mose, and that made it harder to bear. Nearly choked over the bitter morsel. Tilly Bassett, whatever made you put wormwood and catnip in your stuffing? Ma tried not to be severe, for all the rest were laughing, and Tilly looked ready to cry. I did it, said Prue, nobly taking all the blame, which caused Pa to kiss her on the spot, and declared that it didn't do a mite of harm, for the turkey itself was all right. I never seen onions cooked better. All the vegetables well done. The dinner's a credit to you, my dears, declared Aunt Cynthia, with her mouth full of the fragrant vegetables she was praising. The pudding, though, was an utter failure, in spite of the blazing brandy in which it lay, as hard and heavy as one of the stone balls on Squire Duncan's great gate, was speedily whisked out of sight, and all fell upon the pies, which were perfect. But Tilly and Prue were much depressed, and didn't recover their spirits till the dinner was over and evening fun well under way. Blind man's buff, no, hunt the slipper, come philander, and other lively games soon set everyone bubbling over with jollity. And when F struck up with Money Musk on his fiddle, old and young fell into their places for a dance. All down the long kitchen they stood, Mr. and Mrs. Bassett at the top, the twins at the bottom. Then away they went, heeling and towing, cutting pigeon wings, and taking their steps in a way that would convulse modern children with their newfangled romps called dancing. Mose and Tilly covered themselves with glory by the vigor with which they kept it up, till plump old Aunt Cynthia fell into a chair, breathlessly declaring that a very little of such exercise was enough for a woman of her heft. Apples and cider, chat and singing, finished the evening, and after grand kissing all round, the guests drove away in the clear moonlight, which came just in time to cheer their long drive. When the jingle of the last bell had died away, Mr. Bassett said soberly as they stood together upon the hearth, Children, we have special cause to be thankful that the sorrow we expected was changed into joy. So we'll read a chapter before we go to bed and give thanks where thanks is due. And then Tilly set out the light stand with a big Bible on it and a candle on each side, and all sat quietly in the firelight, smiling as they listened with happy hearts to the sweet old words that fit all times and seasons so beautifully. When the good nights were over and the children in bed, Prue put her arm around Tilly and whispered tenderly, for she felt her shake, and she was sure she was crying. Tilly, darling, don't you mind about the old stuffing and the pudding, dear? Nobody cared. And Ma said we really did surprising well for such young girls we are. The laughter Tilly was trying to smother broke out then and was so infectious. Prue could not help joining her, even before she knew the cause of the merriment. Oh, Prue, darling, I was mad about the mistakes, but I don't care enough to cry. I'm laughing to think how Gad fooled old F when I found him out. I thought Mose and Amos would have died over it when I told them it was so funny, explained Tilly when she got her breath at last. Oh, Prue said, I was so scared when that first orange hit me, I thought it was a bullet, and I scrabbled into the cradle as fast as I could. It was real mean to frighten the little ones so. Laughed Prue as Tilly gave a growl. Here, a smart rap on the wall of the next room caused a sudden lull in the fun, and Mrs. Bassett's voice was heard saying warningly, Girls, you go to sleep immediate like, or you'll wake the baby. Yes'm, answered two meek voices, and after a few irrepressible giggles, silence reigned, broken only by an occasional snore from the boys or the soft scurry of mice in the buttery, taking their part in this old-fashioned Thanksgiving. So Thanksgiving story. Happy Thanksgiving to you guys. And something I think we can all say, as we're very, very thankful for, is to have you as part of our special family here in the virtual worlds. So thank you for joining us. Again, that was by Louisa May Alcott of Little Women fame.